Good afternoon. I am trying to fix something really quick as I get set up tonight. I am going to go ahead and leave it on subscribers only for comments as I did this afternoon. I will probably turn comments on a couple times just because I usually do. Yeah, I decided I should come back or that I would like to come back, so I came back in. Just a lot today. And so I thought that it would be best to come back into for a while. I will be leaving it on subscriber only for comments for a while. I will turn on comments for everybody at some point, I'm sure, because I usually do. It's going to be a little bit safer in here tonight. I feel that way just because of how it can go. I'll probably turn them on until it gets too weird. We'll do it that way. I think that these are some important things to be looking at. And so I think that as we're kind of moving through this, looking at these things, trying to come in at several different times and speak on it is the best possible thing that I can possibly do with it. And so I'm going to do my best. And this might be the only day that I do these. And then I might go back into doing what we typically do in here, which is, and we discuss this area in here all the time. We just don't discuss it in Homo sapien time frame. Take a look further back. We'll get to the further back after a while. I just feel that these things are extremely important. That's about religion. I'm talking about groups of people who have lived in a space for thousands of years. The Palestinians are descendants of the ancient Canaanites. That's been proven through DNA. So they are the people that the state of Israel, in its earliest conception, colonized and documented their colonization of, and documented their attempted genocide of, right? Their religious state does not define their identity, right? Oh, yeah, we're there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I'll turn regular chats back on after a while, probably when it gets a little bit less freaky in here. What we're going to talk about today are what the actual archaeological evidence, what the history of this space is, and what is actually going on a historical level, and what is going on a prior to historical level. For me, I believe these things are extremely important as we are working as a world to try and decolonize and try and stop a lot of the atrocities that are going on around the world, right? So I want to go over first how we got where we are today, right? How did we get to where we are today in this conflict? And how did we get to where we are today on a world stage with this conflict? And where we are truly today as a world stage with this conflict. So the first thing that I want to point out is that the earliest documentation of this conflict in this area is documented by the Torah. And this earliest documentation of the conflict in this area documented by the Torah is God has promised a holy land, a land of milk and honey. And as he has promised this holy land and this land of milk and honey, he leads the Israelites, the government that becomes Israel, the leaders that become the state of Israel, into spaces. And he helps them destroy the people within those spaces. He helps them colonize. This is an extremely early form and probably our first iteration of manifest destiny. God said that you can have this land. God gave you this land. And because God gave you this land, you can destroy all the people within this land and take this land. This is the same manifest destiny that is almost justified by using word for word these passages from the Bible that describe this manifest destiny in its earliest form. Later on, when Europe decides that it is going to manifest destiny, the Western Hemisphere and Africa. And so, what we're seeing in its very earliest iteration of this conflict is the presence of a non indigenous group to the area being led to this area by their God, and their God telling them that they can have this area. All they have to do is kill all the people in this area. And so we see things like the walls of Jericho. We see things like the rape and pillage that is described throughout the Bible of the Canaanites. And we also see things like the book of Joshua, where the general Joshua goes into the area and divides what becomes Palestine, the Canaanite area, which is a couple of different city states at this point, in among his people. This nation or this tribe goes here, and this tribe goes there, and this tribe goes there. So this is the earliest documentation that we have of the people within this space involved in this current conflict. Now, archaeology supports the presence of people within this space much further back than this. Supports the fact that the presence of the people within this space become the Canaanites that are talked about in the Bible. That the Canaanites at this time are a mixture of a few different hunter-gatherer groups who are in this area and are descendant of the Levantian peoples. Who are peoples who, again, are nomadic and comprised of a couple of different groups genetically within this area. So this is the earliest discussion of this area and who the people are in this area per the Torah, per the earliest written documentation of what is going on in this area and what the archaeological evidence shows within this area. Genetically, the archaeological evidence shows that the people who are the descendants of these ancient groups of people, the nomadic nations, the Canaanites, are three different groups of people. Judaic people, not the state of Israel or those who are currently in the state of Israel, but Judaic people worldwide have some presence of Canaanite DNA. Palestinian people have Canaanite DNA. And the closest, 90% of their DNA being Canaanite DNA, would be the Lebanese people. There is a large percentage of Canaanite DNA in Palestinian people. The evidence shows that the Palestinian people are descendants of the Canaanites and a couple of different nomadic groups that go through this area. So when we read the documented history of what has happened in this area by the colonizers of this area who document what they have done in very graphic terms and righteous terms. Righteous actually comes from this, right? Very righteously document what they have done in this area. We read that they come in and they destroy cities. They eradicate people. They kill children and they kill women. And as they come in and take this land that was given to them by their deity in this first example of religious extremism, in this earliest example of manifest destiny, especially based on the same God that we're seeing both of these things based on these days today, we're seeing that this documentation of these atrocities is with righteous zeal. God said we could. So after the state of Israel or the Israelites take over this area and conquer this area, the Israelites go through their own traumas, right? There is a lot of persecution of the Israelites. There is a lot of trauma of the Israelites as Rome comes in and starts conquering, right? This is probably the second time that the Israelites have been conquered after their colonization of this space. Let me go into really quick the differences between immigration, migration, and colonization, because when we're talking about the differences between immigration, migration, and colonization, those differences are important when we're talking about all of these different things that we typically talk about in here. So, immigration is when a group of people moves into a space. Let's start with migration, and I always do this. Migration is when a group of people either moves into a space that is not occupied by another group of people, or when they move into a space that is occupied, or a space that they typically occupy. So you might have a seasonal migration pattern where you have a summer camp, a winter camp, fall camp, and this actually might be you have a summer house and a winter house and a fall house, right? This is many groups of people during the same what we consider historic timelines will either be migratory hunter gatherers or collectors, and the only difference is that a hunter gatherer moves to the spot that they are gathering things from and moves their entire people, their entire community to this spot, right? Builds a home in this spot. Whereas a gather community has a space that they all live and they go out to gather during the different seasons. Okay. You might be a part of a migratory group that migrates into a space that other communities migrate into. You might live your community a 5 minute walk from the next community over, and it could be an entirely different nation of people. And yet you both migrate into this space all the time. You live side by side. Your space is your space, and their space is their space. Immigration is when, immigration is when a group of people goes into a space that is already occupied. And instead of, insisting on their ways being what goes on in that space, they move into that space and they acclimate to the community within that space. They fall under the government of the community within that space. They take on their traditions of the community within that space. They do not impose their ideas and their thought processes on that community. Instead, they meld into the community and become a part of the community. This is immigration. Colonization is when a group of people go into a space that is already occupied and in some method or another, usually through atrocious violence, take over that space, and impose their government on the space that is already occupied, already has a governance, already has a community and a civilization. So, when we are looking at the differences between immigration, migration, and colonization, we can see that as people are moving across the globe, migration and immigration happens on a regular basis. Colonization is something that is an entirely different thing. And colonization, again, often done through atrocity, is something that gives this control to an outside people and is often done, again, through the attempt to eradicate a group that is already there. So when we are looking at what is currently happening within this space, again, taking it back to the start, we see that the colonization by the state of Israel against the Canaanites happens. The state of Israel is in control of this space for a while. The state of Israel ends up being conquered themselves by a couple of different nations over the course of a few hundred years. And then the state of Israel, or the people of the state of Israel, end up being dispersed. There ends up being a diaspora created across the globe. And this is where we get to Judaic people. It should be understood, I mean, they're Judaic before that, but it should be understood that there is a difference between people who are Jewish, people who are Judaic, and the state of Israel. Many people who are Judaic, many people who follow Judaism, many people who have been Jewish their whole life have no truck with what the state of Israel is doing. Many people who are Judaic find what the state of Israel what the state of Israel is doing to be a horror show, right? An atrocity, right? So when we are looking at how um, the state of Israel kind of disperses and disbands in its kind of final dispersal prior to current times, we see that the Judaic people are moving across the globe. They are becoming communities in different spaces across the globe. There are many people who are Judaic who are there are many people who are Judaic who are currently in the United States, many people who are Judaic who are currently in Britain, many places across the globe. Now, of course, we should also point out that as the Judaic people are moving across the globe into each space that they're moving into, they are facing atrocity themselves within this space. The difference between Palestine and Philistine is timeline, and I think Philistine is actually a different group of people genetically. And they are living in a space. So Philistine comes after Canaan, and Philistine isn't thought to have been they're an immigrant group who moves into the Canaanite area, and Palestinians are not a descendant of the Philistines. So they are two different groups. When we are looking at getting to the point we are at now, again, as the Judaic people are moving across the globe, we're seeing that the Judaic people have atrocities committed against them across the globe. The Holocaust is not the first atrocity committed against Judaic people as they move across the globe. It is one in a series of horrors. There is a huge Holocaust that happens in the 1400s in England. There is not quite Holocaust levels, but lots of atrocity that happens against the Judaic people here in the United States. The United States was committing Holocaust against indigenous people. So, maybe it didn't have time to go full out against the Judaic people. Yet there are still several atrocities committed against the Judaic people here within the United States. After World War II, when the Holocaust is committed, the United States and Britain, in their attempt to seek justice for the Judaic people, for what had happened, and sometimes a little bit in their white guilt of their need to actually have stepped in much sooner, and they didn't. We see that Britain and the United States decides that they are going to create a state of Israel and give this state of Israel space within what is at the time Palestine. Now, during this, what we're looking at is the fact that Great Britain took over the area that is Palestine at the end of the Ottoman Empire, at the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The correct verb I cannot remember, but they basically put it in this space of guardian ad litem. They decide that the people of this area, that the communities of this area don't have the ability to govern themselves, and they decide that Great Britain is going to govern them instead, right? The infantilization of the Arab nations of Palestine at this time is extreme. And in this decision to be in control of Palestine, we see that Britain decides that they're going to go ahead and give the state of Israel that they and the United States have created space in this country that is not theirs. Because they have control over this country, they have the ability to do that. So they go to the United Nations and they ask the United Nations to decide who gets what. Now, the original map that the United Nations comes up with and draws is available online for everybody to look at. And it gives vast control of most of the territory of Palestine to the state of Israel. And it is all continuous space. It leaves Palestinian space really around the Gaza Strip and around the West Bank areas. And it actually leaves Palestine in control of the capital of Jerusalem, or the city of Jerusalem, not in control, but surrounding it. And then this city of Jerusalem becomes a international space. As an international space, anybody can enter this. It is not underneath the control of any different state. Israel stole the land from the Canaanites, who the Palestinians are the descendants of. Okay. So if Israel, the state, stole the land from the Canaanites, and the Canaanites' descendants, the Palestinians, are still there, and so Israel comes back in and decides to try and steal it from the descendants of the original Canaanites, the Palestinians, I don't know what you think you're saying, but you're wrong, right? So when we're seeing that this movement back in, so we see the new UN draws up this map, and the UN draws up this map that very clearly favors Israel. And the Palestinians at this time go, we can't do this way. I get what you're trying to do, but if you do it that way, the state of Israel has the way you have laid out this map. And if you look at it, you see that the state of Israel is all within one continuous space, and Palestine is separated by the state of Israel. In every space that you see, Palestine is separated by Israel. So the state of Palestine says, you can't do it this way. If you do, it'll give Israel too much control to take our land. Please don't do it this way. So the UN decides to go back and redraw. While the UN is redrawing, the state of Israel, with the help of the United States, goes in and starts a war. With the help of the United States, I'm not sure what the Balfour Declaration is. I don't know everything on the subject. I don't know everything about anything. That is not what I'm aiming for. The Rothschild family is a big part of the United States government, just so you know, right? So you see that the state of Israel and the United States government, with the backing of the United States government and the help of the United States government, goes in and starts a war. And when they go in to start a war, they take over a portion of the land that is what was laid out by the UN as the land that the state of Israel should have. And they take over a portion of the land that Palestine is supposed to have in this redraw. This is in 1948. Israel voted Hamas in, not Palestine. Israel voted Hamas in, not Palestine. You might want to go and do a little bit deeper of a dig on that one. So at the end of 1948, we now have the state of Israel in several different places within the country of Palestine. The country of Palestine has been at war with them for a couple of years at this point, right? And as they were at war with them for a couple of years, we see what we call the 6 Arab nations fighting against the state of Israel to retain land. Thank you, Yosef. I'll go ahead and look that up. So after Israel has taken this land, the war between the state of Israel and the 6 Arab nations has ended. The state of Israel continues to expand their land through conquering, through war, right? Through attacks, right? And in this expansion of their land through attacks, they continuously push the Palestinians into less and less and less and less and less space. This is exactly what the Palestinians told the UN that they were afraid would happen. During this time, we see that the United States refuses to acknowledge that the Palestinians have a government and refuses to acknowledge that the Palestinians are a country. And we see that the United States continues to help the state of Israel in their atrocities against the Palestinians. How did the Palestinians declare war when they were the ones invaded, Dean Bean? If I invade your home, did I declare war on you, or did you declare war on me? Because if I invade your home, I'm pretty sure I declared war on you. If you try and kick me out of your home, did you declare war by trying to kick me out of the home that I invaded? Right? So when we see this expansion of the state of Israel, as the Palestinian government and the Palestinian people had told, well, I guess at this point, there's not a government for the Palestinians because the Palestinians are controlled at this point by the country of Britain until they're released from that control. So as they had told the UN was going to happen, the state of Israel expands, and it is an expansion in its wars against the Palestinian people and driving out of people in space. We get almost to where we're at now. In 1967, we see that Israel attacks Egypt and takes the Gaza Strip from Egypt, because at this time it belongs to Egypt, and takes Suez. Oh my. I'm very, very horrible at geography. But there is a country right below that, Sinai, not Suez. It is the Suez Canal, but the Sinai Peninsula. That Israel invades the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula, and tries to take both of these spaces from the country of Egypt. They are able to take both of these spaces to some extent. But Israel declared war to get to being in that space. You're not hearing EE. So if Israel's not in this space and Israel invades this space and then becomes a state, they declared war to get to that point. So to get to the point that they are the state of Israel in Israel, they had to declare war and attack and invade. And that's not what's false. You should go do some more research. The 7 Arab nations didn't invade Israel. Israel invaded, and the 7 Arab nations fought back. So a country that Britain didn't own, that Britain actually didn't give Israel, was given to Israel by Britain. I am just going off of what is easily found, so not really that informed or misinformed. And going off of the actual scientific journals based on what is going on in the area, as in the genetics in the area and as in what has been happening in the area, right? So, but we all know how I can get extremely distracted by the comments, so we'll go ahead and keep them off for a while. So in 1967, as the state of Israel, again, a state that has already been invading and attacking the entirety of the Palestinian nations around it, decides to attack Egypt and takes the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. When they attack Egypt and take the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, they're able to wrest it from Egypt, but they're not able to wrest total control of the space. And because they're unable to wrest total control of this space, we see that they impose blockades on this space. So currently, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula was taken back. And I want to say that it was taken back with the help of the United States. I can't remember exactly on the Sinai Peninsula because I didn't go too deep into that. When we see Israel take the Gaza Strip area and the West Bank area at roughly the same time, we see that in this taking of the Gaza Strip area and the West Bank area, they impose these blockades. They impose the inability for people to leave. In 1967, they count that as the start of the Palestinian people becoming refugees in their own homeland. So we see that the Gaza Strip is a roughly 2 square miles of land space that is about 2 million people within it. Of that 2 million people, about 1 million of them are children, and about 500,000 of them, 500,000, are children underneath the age of 12 at this current time. They take over this space in 1967, start imposing blockades, and start attacking on a regular basis. Currently, today, they have control of the water in this space. They have control of the actual sea, right, within this space. They allow people to fish just a couple of miles out, but if you go over 3-4 miles out, you end up out into where the actual decent fishing is. You see that people are shot. People's boats are capsized or destroyed so that they can't make it back to land. So people are killed if they go further fishing out than 3 miles, meaning that they are not fishing in good areas, right? They're not fishing in deep water areas that are going to provide an abundance of fish. 80% of the water within this area is controlled by the state of Israel. And there is constant attacks within this area by the state of Israel. These attacks over the course of the last, God, what is it? 60 years at this point. Okay, so we're looking at roughly, my math, 37, 57, or 53 years, 53 years at this point. Over the last 53 years that we see that these attacks have been consistent. These attacks have several times been the reason that the UN calls on a stop, asks for the stop of Israel's attacks on the Gaza Strip and on the West Bank. We see that there has been several accords, several peace talks done between the state of Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, starting in the 90s. We see that the first request for a resolution comes in 1967 from the UN in November of 1967. This is called Resolution 242, and this requires the withdrawal of Israel armed forces from territories occupied by the recent conflict, and termination of all claims or states of belligerency and respect for an acknowledgement of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of every state in the area, and their right to live in peace within secure and recognized boundaries, free from threats or act of force. This is in November of 1967 by the UN, after the state of Israel attacks the Palestinians and ends up creating what we call today the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. We see that there is another resolution in 73 asking all parties present fighting to cease all firing and terminate all military activity immediately, no later than 12 hours after the moment of the adoption of this decision, in positions after the moment of the adoption of this decision, in the positions they now occupy. So no later than 12 hours after the moment of the adoption of this decision, in positions after the moment of the adoption of decision, in the positions they now occupy. It does say it twice. I had to reread it to make sure it wasn't just me. Calls upon all parties concerned to start immediately after the ceasefire the implementation of the Security Council Resolution 242, which we just read some of. Decides that immediately and concurrently with the ceasefire negotiations start between the parties concerning appropriate auspices. I can't say it today. Aimed at establishing a just and durable peace in the Middle East. So we have continuously seen that the United Nations is calling for a ceasefire by the state of Israel, and calling for Israel to withdraw their forces from these spaces. We also see that there was a call by the Geneva Convention to do the same thing. And yet we see that there is a constant refusal to stop the atrocities that are being committed. Okay. When we're looking at this, let me make sure that I have the right thing up. To get to the state that we are in now, we see that in the 90s, and now again, the attack of the Gaza Strip and the attack of the West Bank happens in 1967. After decades of this attack on these spaces, constant bombing, constant influx, constant control, we see that Hamas takes control over the government of the Palestinian Authority. Now, there are 3 or 4 different documentations out there of how this happens. And I have read 3 or 4 different documentations out there of how this happens. I want everybody to remember that frequently, really everywhere, we have an extremely biased media. And in our extremely biased media, each side is going to report what they think that they need you to hear to make you believe what they want you to believe. So if you have a government that is pro-state of Israel, the government that is pro-state of Israel is going to report against the Palestinians. So take the United States, which is a pro-Israel government. And I state that the United States is a pro-Israel government because of the fact that the United States has funded Israel since its start in the 40s, when Israel invaded the country of, at the time, the country of Palestine, and has continued to financially support them and is currently financially supporting them. That pro-Israel government might state that Hamas took control without voting, without anybody putting them into place. Okay. You might have a space that is a pro-Palestinian government that is trying to make you believe what they want you to believe about the Palestinian space, who states that Israel has placed Hamas in control. You might have a space that is pro-Palestinian that has stated that Palestine has put Hamas into place. And you might have a space that is pro-Israel that is going to state that Palestine put Hamas in place. So we're going to have to decide out of those 3 bits of information what actually happened, and you're going to have to parse it out. Okay. I can't tell you how Hamas gets into place or Hamas gets into place. I can tell you that they take control during the Battle of Gaza, and they formed their own government in 2006. Now, I will never support religious extremism, not even close. This is all religious extremism from both sides. This is the state of Israel deciding that their state and their religion and their government should be supreme, and they're going to take this land back from the Palestinians because they believe that it is their land, even though they took it from the Palestinians to start with. You have Hamas, who is like, you've been killing us for almost 100 years now, and we're done, so now we're taking you out. Hamas originally stated in their original manifesto that they were going to remove the state of Israel completely and utterly. Their current manifesto states that their goal is to remove control of the state of Israel over Palestinian regions. Now, does that mean that Hamas has changed their minds, or does that mean that Hamas has changed what they're stating for everybody to see? Can't tell you, don't know, right? I would probably say most likely the latter. I would say that while I never support religious extremism, I always support land back. And if you have been fighting against a government that is trying to violently colonize you for 100 years, the overthrow and the destruction of that government that has violently been colonizing you for 100 fucking years might just be your goal. And I can't fault anybody for feeling that way. Could not fault a single person for wanting the destruction of their children to stop. Currently, the reason that half of the population in the Gaza Strip is children is because the state of Israel has been attacking the Gaza Strip since 67 when it imposes its structure of control over the Gaza Strip. And in their imposing their structure of control over the Gaza Strip and their consistent attempts to eradicate the people within the Gaza Strip, we have reached a space where over half of the people still alive within the Gaza Strip are children. And again, half of that half, so 500,000, are children under the age of 12. And this is because of the constant attacks. Now, to my knowledge, Hamas isn't trying to destroy the Judaic people. Hamas is trying to destroy the government that has colonized them, that has taken over their space. Again, religious extremism is always bad. Always, always, always. Whether it is you using religious extremism to overthrow the government that is colonizing you, or you using a religious extremism to colonize a people. So we have two sides here using religious extremism against each other. Yet the Palestinians themselves are not using religious extremism against the state of Israel any more than the Judaic people in the United States are using religious extremism against the Palestinian people in the United States, right? What is going on is a country trying to be acknowledged as a country by the United States and be able to have governance in their own space and not be bombed daily. There are Palestinians on here whose one request is that the bombing stop. To stop the bombing. Our children are dying. Just stop the bombing. Our children are dying. Just stop the bombing. Our children are dying. There are people out here pissed off that Hamas killed a couple of kids who are refusing to see that Israel is attacking 1 million children every day. 1 million children every day. Many children who do not have parental units because of those attacks. Right? We can't do jack shit about it from over here. And let's be real. We should have never gotten involved in the first fucking place. The United States should not have been involved. Britain should not have been involved. Britain shouldn't have infantilized the Palestinian people in the first place and decided to have their fucking guardian ad litem shit over the Palestinian people and then decide that it was okay to move an entire other state of people into the Palestinian space. Right? Yet, we are here. I can't come up with a solution that involves you doing anything. The only thought processes that I can personally think of that can save any of it is to ask what the Palestinians need. What do they need so they are no longer being bombed every fucking day? What do they need so that they don't have another government in control of their water? What do they need so that they are no longer being threatened on a regular basis? What do they need so that they are safe and stable? As I frequently tell people, it's not anybody's job to go in there with their white savior thought process on their white horse and save with their ideas. We should be asking what needs to be done, not deciding what needs to be done for other people. I'll go ahead and turn the comments on briefly. There are like 100 people in here, so it might be a little bit trolly. So if I turn them on and they get shitty, first of all, understand I will not be paying attention to some comments just because. Not dealing with it. And if you are repetitively making comments or asking questions without hearing any answers, I'm going to start ignoring your questions and your comments because that doesn't seem like you're actually doing something within this or doing it within a thought process of positivity. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I want to go over what it states on the back of my wall here before I open it, because some of these are important to the safe space that we talk about within here. First of all, Palestinians are indigenous to the area because they are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites. This is through DNA and archaeological evidence. Okay. Land back globally is important. We've talked about this a lot. And the state of Israel is not the Judaic people. I will not be dealing with hate within my space. If you have a problem with the Judaic people, I have a problem with you, and you can scroll to gone. Okay? The state of Israel is not the Judaic people. Many Judaic people hold no truck with what the state of Israel is doing, and many Judaic people would tell you to free Palestine. So do not bring your anti-Semitism into my chat either. But I'll go ahead and turn the comments on. And we'll see if we can maintain some pleasantness with the comments on and this many people in here. We went over a brief history of how we got to the current space. Again, I want it to be known that I don't want to ever be the expert in any situation, right? I'm not here to be the expert. I'm here for very basic base needs. Jeffro, the fact that you're making that statement is a problem. And I want you to understand that. That is part of the issue. I do have mods. I'm not sure how many of my mods are in here currently, just because of the fact that a lot of my mods are daytime people and it's nighttime for me, or not the time of day that I usually come in. I've been doing more daytime because it's really hard for me to talk this late at night. A lot of times my brain is kind of mush, right? There is no country of Palestine. There are Palestinians. There was a country of Palestine, but you are right in that comment. You're right. There is no Palestine acknowledged by the United States. There are actually like 127 countries that acknowledge the country of Palestine, right? The United States just doesn't happen to be one of them. Repeating nope is just repeating nope. My YouTube is inwitta.org, and I am live streaming this on YouTube currently, and all of these are able to be rewatched on YouTube. Absolutely. We went over a brief history of how we got here. We went over an understanding of what is currently going on. Again, a light understanding, because I am not an expert. I don't want to be an expert. So the Ottoman Empire ended, and Palestine was the region in the country that was under the control of the British Empire at the ending of the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire ends and Britain comes in, and there's a word for it when it's a country, and I don't remember what the word is, but it is basically a guardian ad litem, where they come in and they state, this country can't control themselves, so we're going to be in charge of this country. And so Britain did that with the country that was at the time Palestine. So I am taking it back to the ancient Canaanites, who were the people who were invaded. When you look at the ancient Canaanites, you can see that the ancient Canaanites are the people who were the nomadic groups that were there at the time, and were the descendants of the nomadic groups that have been there throughout the ages, right? Thank you, thank you. And it's colonialism. It's colonialism that was documented. It is, I feel that it is the first manifest destiny that we have, right? It's the first time that we see a manifest destiny in action. And it is actually when manifest destiny becomes an actual thing, like they use those terminologies, it is actually the conquering by the state of Israel of the Canaanites that is, and the colonization of the Canaanites by the state of Israel that is touted as reasoning, right? God promised this holy land. God promised this land of milk and honey, right? And we are the chosen of God, right? And so when we look at manifest destiny, we can see that manifest destiny's roots come in from the conquering of the Holy Land, the colonization of the Holy Land, the stealing of the Holy Land from the people who are there at the time when it is invaded by the original state of Israel. We went over the fact that when Gaza Strip and the West Bank were attacked in 1967, that the UN in the end of 1967 called for a ceasefire and asked that Gaza Strip and the West Bank be returned to the Palestinians, and that it no longer be the war zone that it is. No, but America caused it. America created it. America is the reason it is happening. 100% this is America's doing. Maybe if we would shut up and get out of it, it would be undone. It's our problem if we're still nose deep in it, ain't it? Right? So who are the terrorists? The people who are killing children? That would be the state of Israel. So if you're standing with the state of Israel, you're supporting terrorists. No, Palestine doesn't really support the US, and the US doesn't support Palestine. The objective of Israel seems to be to eradicate the Palestinians. The Palestinians are actually not able to escape. Like the escape routes that they have, like, either over water or down into Egypt, the escape routes that they might have are all being blocked. And if they are caught going over those escape routes, they actually get slaughtered going over those escape routes. The Palestinians are the descendants of the Canaanites. So the Palestinians would be the indigenous people of that land. DNA shows that the Palestinians are descendants of the Canaanites. Israel blocks the escape routes and slaughters the Palestinians as they're trying to leave. Israel did start this entire conflict in 1948. They're never being respectful, Star. You know how it goes in here. Philistines are not indigenous to the area. In fact, the Philistines were immigrants. It states in Philistinian history that the Philistines were immigrants and came into the Canaanite area. The Canaanites are the indigenous people, and the Palestinians are the descendants of the Canaanites. Israel comes from, at that point of time in their documentation, 40 years wandering in the desert when they entered the country of the Canaanites and colonized the Canaanites. You don't think that, well, okay, so pretty sure that the people who ran the state of Israel are still alive 50 years after the 1967 invasion of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. The people who run Israel are still alive. But seeing as the population of the West or of the Gaza Strip is 2 million Palestinians, and of those 2 million Palestinians, 1 million of them are children, and 500,000 of that 1 million are children underneath the age of 12. I'm pretty sure you're right that the people who were defending their country, the people who were defending Palestine when Israel invaded in 1967, are likely to be dead. I mean, 50 years of being bombed by another state, most of your people are dead too. If another country has been bombing your country for 50 years and your country is a 2-mile square strip, you're not likely to have a lot of population over the age of 30. It was Canaanite land, which means it was Palestinian land before it was Jewish land. The state of Israel started this war. Palestine is currently inhabited by people who are direct descendants of the Canaanites. Do they have other descendancy as well, like most people in that area? Yes, absolutely. But they are descendants of the Canaanites. You guys are cute tonight. I would think I'd be safer in Gaza during peacetime than in Israel. I mean, one is a state that's trying to colonize another state. So, and the state of Israel has not had peace since it invaded to gain its state. Like Israel invaded Palestine to get the state of Israel to happen. They went to war against Palestine to get the state of Israel to happen, because when the UN said, okay, so if they don't want that, let's redraw that map, Israel said, yeah, go fuck yourself, everybody. We're going to invade this country and take this country's space. So Israel started the war. The state of Israel starts the war. The state of Israel continues the war. The state of Israel continues its expansion, right? It is really nuts. I'm really trying to ignore most of it, right? Because the comment section is really fucking nuts. It's kind of stupid, right? Like there's a lot of people in there who obviously haven't done any research or any knowledge. They're just following the propaganda their government spits at them, right? The state of Israel is not the Judaic people, and Palestine's religion has nothing to do with it. We're talking about the genetics of a people, not the God that was forced upon them by the Israelis to start with. Because the Canaanites' gods were not Yahweh. And when the Israelites invade Canaan, They enforce their God on them. And when people decide to adjust, right? Because maybe you don't know that Islam is based on the Torah. I learned how to read the Torah in Hebrew at 7 years old when I learned Islam, when I read the Quran at 7 years old. And I read the Torah in Hebrew and can tell you that every single Christian, Islamic, they're all based on the same thing. They all come from the same space. And for the Islamic countries that were invaded by the Israelites and had the Israelite religion forced on them, the fact that they believe in the God that the Israelites forced on them is not their fucking fault. It's Israel's. It is Zionist versus Hamas, not a civilian war. Hamas in itself is absolutely a problem. Does not mean that Israel should not be getting the fuck out of Gaza. Yes, absolutely. This is the first form of manifest destiny. So the colonization of Canaan by the Israelites is the first manifest destiny, and it's later used as a justification for the manifest destiny that takes over the United States, Turtle Island. We also see that confining 2 million people into a 2 mile square strip is eerily similar to reservations, concentration camps, open air prisons. Um, Putting everybody in a space that you can routinely bomb is also eerily similar to many things that happened in the United States. It's also and has been called by everybody on this planet apartheid, which happened in South Africa, which was based on American racism because America does their racism the best. So in apartheid in South Africa, they would create townships and spaces that only had an exit in and out at the same end, and you couldn't get through without the exit in and out, so that they could easily bomb them, right? And this is very much the same and similar, right? Well, this is my space. I'm indigenous. I've been in this space since prior to 1492. If you want to send anywhere and anywhere, you can go. Take yourself back home where you came from. You got a problem with my science degree? Sorry. It is very much like a concentration camp when you put maybe you can compare it to the Warsaw Ghetto instead. Let's compare it to the Warsaw Ghetto instead. We'll do that. We can compare it to the Warsaw Ghetto instead. I mean, that would probably be the most accurate representation is the Warsaw Ghetto. Do you support Israel murdering children? You're supporting Israel's murder of children. You think it's okay to support Israel's murder of children. I see that you think it's okay for Israel to murder children. It's okay for Israel to murder children. I see that you see that. Israel's been murdering children since they took over that area in 1948 and started their expansion. Hamas only came around in the 90s. So who's been murdering children longer? I see that you support Israel killing children. I get that. I understand that you support Israel killing children. You can continue to support Israel murdering children. I mean, I personally think that that's ethically horrific. Yet I'm not going to tell you. I mean, your God probably says it's okay anyways. You can continue to support the fact that Israel is murdering children. I'm not. I had to hide my face. Do you see my face? It's up close and personal, baby. My face is always out there. Jewish people and the state of Israel are two different things. And Jewish people are absolutely speaking against what the state of Israel is doing. And that should be known. That the Judaic people do not support what the state of Israel is doing. The Judaic people across the globe are calling for the state of Israel to stop the atrocities that they are committing. The Bible actually, your Christianity is actually death supporting, and honestly, the Torah supports death too. If you've actually read it, I doubt you have, but the Torah supports killing people too. Actually, I read the Torah in Hebrew as a 7-year-old. I could not read in Hebrew today. It's been like 40 years, right? But I read the Torah originally in Hebrew as a child. I like how you're using a Middle Eastern thought to explain something that doesn't explain what I'm talking about, anyways, and deciding that you're going to appropriate a Middle Eastern thought process. That's cute. That's real big. That's real. Palestinians were in Israel prior to the invasion of the Israelites. Palestinians are the descendants of the Canaanites. DNA shows that Palestinians are the descendants of the Canaanites. DNA showing that Palestinians are the descendants of the Canaanites means that Israel invaded and colonized the Canaanites, which means that it is not Israel's land, it is the Palestinians' land. My sources for the DNA reference come from the article. Well, there's several articles, but the one that's up on my screen right now is HLA genes in Palestinians, the origin of the Palestinians or their genetic relatedness to other Mediterranean populations from October of 2001. The writers on it are Arnez Velina, Eliwe, Silviera, and Rostam. I didn't vote for Biden. Biden's an idiot and an asshole, just like Trump is. I burn it down. I don't vote for nobody. The United States government is a colonizing government, just like Israel is a colonizing government. It is an invaded government that is maintaining the same invasion style that the state of Israel is maintaining. And I burn it to the ground every single day, land back. It's a scientific article in a scientific journal. Therefore, the scientific article in the scientific journal that talks about science is probably the good article for you to read. Just saying. You're telling me to move into a country? Okay, so first of all, as a war vet who has stood many lines, I would have absolutely no problem going into a space to help defend and protect people because I have done that several times within the course of my life. Again, as a war vet, okay, who has stood shield walls on this side of the pond as well, because there are plenty of wars going on within the United States that you are unfucking aware of because you don't know what the fuck you're doing, right? But as somebody who has been there and has done that, I would absolutely go and do that. Yet I don't know if you understand what you're stating there because you're like, go and move to the West Bank, then, right? As if the Palestinians in the West Bank are the problem and not the attacking fucking state of Israel. So, sure, I'll go and move to the West Bank and help the Palestinians overthrow the attacking government of Israel every fucking day of the week, right? I'm not anti Semite. As it states up there, the state of Israel is not the Judaic people, and the Judaic people do not support the state of Israel. And if you want to bring anti Semitism into my chat, you'll be blocked as fuck because anti Semitism is not acceptable. There is nothing wrong with the Judaic people. The Judaic people are a beautiful people. They have been through an immense amount of atrocities. I have no issue. We got kicked off of TikTok. Hold on, I'm putting in an appeal. I should have turned the comments off a while ago. I knew I should have turned the comments off. But you know how it goes. It didn't seem like it was that bad. So I left them on for a while. That tends to happen. I don't even know when my live access is supposed to be. Yeah. We'll see. I might have to go back to TikTok and talk to them again. Um, TikTok does love me. I think everybody in here has been here the whole time, though. So you have heard really everything I've had to say about the subject. Are there any questions? Are there any understandings that are wanted or needed? Um, is there anything that we can talk about that will broaden understanding? I guess would be the best thing to state. If anybody actually will comment in TikTok, it's so rare and far between that people actually not in TikTok in YouTube. No questions, no comments. Um, I guess for me, the important thing is understanding that our understanding of the situation needs to be deeper. You know, 6, 7 years ago, I would have told you that the Israeli people were the indigenous people of that space. And I know now that that's not true. And had to research and had to learn and had to dig deeper into my understanding. I think that it's important that as we are trying to work towards a less violent future for humanity, that we understand that sometimes our understanding of what's going on is wrong, and that the end goal every single time should be the ending of violence and the freedom of people to live safely in space, right? The end goal in every time should be the ending of violence and the freedom of people to live safely in any space. I, of course, feel that land back is important every single time. I also feel that land back can be done in nonviolent ways. And in many times, land back actually ends the violence that's going on, right? Uh, and so I think that it's important that as we're looking through these things and as we're trying to understand further, that we understand that we should be working towards an end goal of community and stability, an end goal of nurturing each other. And that while we're working towards that end goal comes with all of this is over greed, right? All of this is over what I can control. And if we can figure out how to let go of that, we might get to a different space. Because again, and I say this every single time, we are nurturing and communal. We are nurturing and communal as a species. And it is important as a species to understand that and to work for a better space going forward. I'm going to go ahead and get off. And I'll probably post a video over on TikTok. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.